Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the second episode of Technically Not Speaking. My name is Chaitanya, and I am your co host. I'm a product manager, and I have been in this technology space for a while now, working on tech products, both B2C and B2B. At present, I'm working with Walmart here in the United States. And this is
Well, your other co-host. My name is Prachi, and I am a PMM. I've headed PMM initiatives at big tech startups, so help build strategy, go to market for various AI services and platforms. And we are back here with our episode 2 of Technically Not Speaking.
drum roll. So, we want to just touch base on what we did in our first episode, which was our launch episode. We spoke about the parallels between ancient mythology and modern day technology. We specifically covered two civilizations, which was Indian civilization, ancient Indian civilization in mythology and Greek mythology. And today we are going to touch base on three other civilizations. Prachi, you want to talk about the timeline view that we're going through?
Absolutely. So I'm just going to show what we're going to be covering today. To what you said, we will cover three distinct civilizations. So we'll start with Mesopotamia, which is now modern day Iran, Turkey, Middle East area. And we'll go into from there to Han Dynasty, which was in China, still China. And then we will go into Egypt. We are all fascinated by Egypt and pyramids
Yep.
and all the cool mathematicians and astronomers they had. But we're going to dive into every different civilization and see what they were doing back then. And we'll continue on our timelining approach. And we'll talk about, yeah, how, what they were thinking, how they were thinking, and how they've laid the foundation to modern day tech and AI.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Thanks, Prachi, for actually laying that out. I think it'll actually help our viewers to understand the timeline view of things, right? So when we talk about roots of today's AI, we know it goes back to so many thousands of years ago, which is pretty wild. But if we talk about the Mesopotamian era, right? I would love for you to actually go more deeper into that. But I think timestamp wise, it's around 1800 BCE that we're looking at.
Yeah, I think so. So 4,000 years ago.
Mm,
Absolutely.
4,000 years ago. So we're going to be talking about Babylonians and what these scribes were actually. Because I remember reading in history books, Babylonian is a very famous term there, and read about like I think what their contributions was on the lines of mathematics and how they were building out this whole database of things. But I would let you to actually take this forward because you've done a lot of research on this. So mine will just be some talking points here.
No, I think we both were exchanging a bunch of articles and research papers, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you want to look at Babylonians, I think every civilization is very interesting. And what they were doing is, to your point, these scribes weren't just for writing stories. They were essentially creating, like, how I can say, as world's first computers, right? They would press these reads into clay tablets to make very accurate math tables. They could calculate square roots up to six decimal places. So think of it like when you're creating a computer, you need to create a database system.
Correct.
So yeah, so like instead of recalculating the same problems, because they're doing it with so much accuracy, they could just look up answers.
Yeah. So if I have to understand this right in simple terminology, they were trying to build the world's first computers back then, right?
Yeah. I think like we can draw, obviously, like history is also not the most accurate. It's like what we can interpret out of it, correct?
Correct.
So we were creating these indexes to find information across like multiple tablets. So think of how we're searching things online today, right? But then you have a standardized like database that is put in for us to be able to search. So they also try to standardize and cross-reference this. And imagine at that time, you had those physical tablets, but you have to create everything with consistency, correct? So they were using this number-based system. It's called as, I don't know the formal term for it, but it's like base 60. I think we use base 10.
Mm,
They were using even like a lot with a lot more precision in base 60 and
mm.
it had value. So it's, I think the basic idea is pretty much similar to like the computers that we use today.
So we're actually talking about them
Yeah.
sitting and manually using all of those tablets. I think, like in this reference, as you can see, actually scribing them down. So if you think of it, it must have taken them like years and years of manual labor to actually go into just sitting and doing this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think so. I don't know how much approximate time,
Yeah.
but it's like a lot of mental math also. First of all, you're creating a system like that doesn't exist. So it's like creating like even binary system or anything you talk about. It's all from scratch. And I think you were also mentioning something about Abacus, right?
Wow. I think it's pretty cool, how these different civilizations, they all had their own versions of Abacus.
Yeah.
Sumerians, like the Babylonians, they were using counting boards with these little pebbles, which we also have seen growing up. And I think Greeks had a very different way of doing it. Like they came up with Salamis tablet, that's what they call it. And similar to that, Romans also had their own crude abacus, which had beads.
Oh, wow. Interesting. I didn't know about Romans and Greeks. I always thought it's very confined to Asia.
No, we had this. And we go, like I said, right, every civilization, not maybe every, there were different civilizations that had their own different versions. Chinese had the Suan Pan, right? We spoke about
Yeah.
this. Yeah. And then the Japanese had the Sorbon,
Yeah.
Soraban, or
Yeah.
Soraban. Soraban.
Okay. I'll take it whatever you tell me.
I think, yeah, basically every culture had their own version of abacus and they tweaked it based on how they wanted to use their number system. And this is my understanding of how they actually went back in the day when they wanted to like understand maths and then start with their own interpretations of moving into things.
Yeah, no, well, but I think you're right, right? I think every civilization, anyone, right? Math is just so basic to us. Like we need to do so much more with it. So I think Abacus, I would say even Sumerians had it. So maybe it's just one component of it. But I feel the tablets go slightly beyond. Like we said, you're building out an entire, I would say, data structure or like the information pattern. You're going beyond calculation. So you're also think of if you're doing like record keeping and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How would you do it? So I think tablets could give us a little bit of that peek into what we've done, like in today's day and age. So these ancient tablets, and if we want to connect the dots to modern AI, so it's essentially organizing numbers in a structured way that can help us process information about our. I think
Mm.
they were doing pretty much the same. And a scribe trained in one Babylonian city could use tables created years earlier in another city, or even later for that matter.
Oh,
So think of it like just how we share digital information today. You create it in one city. You
mm.
have a standardized ways of creating that data structure. It's trained essentially, and I don't know how they trained it. It's like very amusing to me. So think of it again. I'll just give you another interpretation and you can add on to it. If you ask an AI assistant a question now, you're actually using an idea that's born 4,000 years ago.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
So these were, I think, the first computational tools. Again, right? We have so many other civilizations we go across, but this is like pretty interesting, right? Like,
It's
so
very interesting. It is, absolutely. I think,
let me show 1 second. Let me just add this and like just for our viewers or viewers, listeners may not be able to see this, but think of these tablets are stacked and then how you create databases for AI systems.
this is so cool. And it's so nice to actually put some vision to what it must have looked like back then.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to imagine the scale at which they must have created these tablets. Because if they were moving them in between cities and for I don't know how many years, but the amount of infrastructure they had to build back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
And right now we've just compiled it and we've created data centers, which are also huge. But
Yeah.
it's interesting, Prachi. That was a very good find. Yeah. I think
Yes,
we will
absolutely.
back to our map to show like what are we going to move to next.
So we will be talking about China, like we both discussed, right? Mesopotamia, 30 to 100 BC. Then we move to China, Han Dynasty, 206 BC to 220 C, and then we get into our favorite, Egypt.
Yes, absolutely.
Just ancient China, how it used to look like. And Han Dynasty was like the prevailing. dynasty at that point in time. So,
Was it the first one, the first dynasty back in China, ancient China?
no, I don't think it was the first. I think it was the most flourishing one, I could say.
Mm.
So, I think the reason we are mentioning this or this particular story is because we want to talk about the seismoscope, however people want to pronounce it,
Yeah.
to
Sis-
modern, yeah, seismoscope to modern AI, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting because we keep thinking, we both keep going back to Europe and Americas and we look at the inventions there. But Europe was like centuries away from Middle Age when this particular dynasty was reaching heights of knowledge.
China's always ahead, but it's good to see that even back. No
Yeah.
political news here, just sharing our thoughts, guys. Disclaimer.
No, but China has been ahead. It's still, if you look at even today, right? Like we all end up reading the stories and like bunch of startups, especially in the AI world. Like they are at pretty much the forefront of so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not like, I think it's what they've had for decades and cross, I think. Yeah,
Little bit digression here, but did you try DeepSeek AI?
I, I was too scared. I didn't want it to give away my data. It's already floating out in the world.
No, that is true. But for a very brief moment, when I was able to download it, I
Yeah.
tried.
Yeah.
Not even kidding, Prachi. The speed at which it was like generating prompts and then it was like giving me all of the output. I was very amazed. But very soon after, I was not able to use it because it was like blocked from my account. But yeah,
Wrong, right? I think as soon as it hit in the app stores and things, like people were crazily
yeah,
using it. And I saw a bunch of people just posting on LinkedIn. I was
yeah.
like, okay, anyone, anyway, people are doing the work. I'm not going to.
But yeah, anyway, this was just a short deviation. Let's come to ancient
Yeah,
China. Yeah.
absolutely. So there was a Chinese polymath. His name was Zhang Heng. And he unveiled an invention that couldn't be matched for 1700 years. It's like a super cool fact. Now, I don't know how much we can claim it, but
Yeah.
I've read it. Like, I was just reading a bunch of research papers, had it. Now, what he unveiled was this world's first earthquake detector. So, I'll show you essentially what he showed to in the court. I don't think it looks appealing.
But yeah, please explain what this is. I'm seeing a bunch of people who are arguing or looking at him, or they just when you look at this image, you see the people that are standing in the background there, they literally want to murder him. I don't know. Please
Yeah.
explain.
Yeah. So it's a bronze vessel. It's, you know how wine barrel, it's, I think, almost the similar size of it. And it has dragons facing in each direction. So each
Okay.
is holding a bronze ball above a toad's open mouth, if you can probably see it. And what you had the reaction to, I think the similar reaction was what the court had, except for the emperor, because he's, oh, and it was a bronze, beautiful object. I don't know, beauty standards were different. So the emperor said, like, oh, what is it? And then Zhang goes and explains that it can detect like distant earthquakes and it can even indicate their direction. So the courtiers were laughing. They were like, how could this metal vessel detect the earth tremors? It's no way possible. And then for a couple of months, like he created it, this was sitting in the palace silent. And then one day during a court, there were like startling echoes through the hall. And one of the bronze ball had dropped from the dragon's mouth into the toad below. And the dragon was facing west.
Okay. So we in that direction. There
Yeah,
was
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, bang on. So he announced that there was an earthquake that has happened in the west of the capital. And the courtiers were like, this man has lost his mind. Like, what
yeah.
is he saying? Like, this doesn't even, it doesn't make sense. And the west of the capital was in, like, the area was called as, I think, Heng. And the people, they confirmed, they asked people to confirm and they said, oh, they didn't feel any earth movement. Like, there was nothing. So then people were like, oh, this is like a very bad invention and he's just making a fool of out of all of us. But then days later, like few messengers arrived from the region. So it's 400 miles west, essentially.
Wow.
And then they said that there was a devastating earthquake that destroyed bunch of villages at exactly the same time. Zhang's device activated, and it had predicted.
So if we have to compare it to modern day technology, like they actually had sensors. He created something in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
I don't know what you call it. Did this have a name?
I think it was just an early, I don't think it had a particular name. It's just a seismoscope. So the thing is that inside the vessel, there was a pendulum system. So when
Oh,
an earthquake occurred, even like miles away, the pendulum would swing like slightly. And this movement would trigger one of the eight mobile levers and cause the dragon to drop the ball.
wow.
Now, modern day scientists have also built replicas of this work. And in 2005, actually, scientists created an pretty much similar replica and they were able to detect earthquakes based on real seismic waves.
Oh, wow. That's very
So,
interesting.
yeah, I think you were asking about, I think you also wanted to mention a couple of other things
Yeah.
that you've done.
Yeah, do have. So just before that, so basically when we are thinking, if I go back on this, we are
Yeah.
talking about like dragons back then who were talking, not maybe dragons actually, like dragons that existed, but basically this bronze structure that had this dragon shape, which would detect the seismic activity, which in modern day technology, we talk about seismic anomaly detection, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the reference you're showing right now.
I'm just showing this, right? Like, look at like, there's a pendulum system, then you have the dragon's head, the ball drops, the toad picks it in the direction it faces. We know and we can see where it essentially goes. So if we were to, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. You were about to say a couple more things.
Yeah, it's very interesting how this whole thing came into existence, right? And even the fact that in 2005, they replicated something similar. Oh, I want to go and read more about this actually. But I think ancient Chinese civilization did not stop inventions there. They I think Zhang was someone who set like a stepping stone, and he also invented something called as an armillary sphere, which was like a three-dimensional model for celestial optics, right? Used for astronomical observations. We also heard about this in different civilizations. Chinese picked it up and they also did that. And this also shows that there's this concept of creating automation,
Yeah.
technological innovation for like centuries and thousands of years ago, and which is exactly what we're trying to like bring into picture over here. That we are doing this comparison between like ancient technology and modern day technology to see that how things were existing way in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he set the precedent. You're right. You're bang on. And I think you were asking this question, how do then these principles embody today's tech? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it basically detected patterns that we cannot, human senses can't. We can't like understand like these waves or we can't predict that. So think of it like transforming raw data into actionable information.
Mm,
Function as an early warning system, correct? But then this is what AI systems do. So like when we have phone alerts
yeah,
about whether we have credit card flags, we see suspicious transactions and we get flagged, you can remember that Zhang Heng genius bronze vessel with the eight dragons and
yeah,
toad, like they are waiting to alert humanity of these invisible patterns. So natural disasters, and I think we've done a great job now with that.
yeah. Just for the fact that we do get a lot of notifications now on everything that we have on our phones and the apps. I wish there's some other question that maybe we only can work on where we only train our minds to look at notifications that actually matter to us and not saying, hey, Sephora has like a 50% sale. Do you want to go and buy?
I
Just,
think I would love that.
of course.
I'm a makeup person. You know me, right? You've
Yeah.
seen me.
Yeah. The fact that you asked me to add more blush and everything, I'm like, what? Again, okay.
So I'll go for the Sephora notification. Although weather notifications are also important. I don't want to stuck anywhere.
With everything that is going on in the world right now, global warming.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So definitely not. I think, are we going on to the, I'll just pull up the map.
Yeah. Most
Or
exciting.
should we just like get into the
Yeah, we can
most
slightly
exciting
jump
one?
to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we've touched base on, oh, yes, beautiful this looks.
I know. See, it's the most prettiest of all. I think the best civilization ever.
Yes, it's very cool. So we know that since the dawn of civilization, like humanity has actually evolved and there has been like a common thread that we show, right? There is going to be something that they want to build. They want to spend some time to understand things. And then whatever they've built and understood, they want to preserve that whole knowledge for future generations. And Egypt is like one perfect example on how they've done that. It's no news to everyone that Egypt civilization has been the paramount for their pyramids, right? Like pyramid,
Absolutely.
the ant is the center for that example, which shows how innovative they were, or not only on the lines of building things, like their intricate architecture with respect to understanding engineering, logistics. Imagine, I think there were some videos out there that showed that there were superhumans that existed back in Egyptian civilization that actually helped in building these pyramids. I mean, we don't know how true this is, but I feel like there was a lot to do with the way they planned everything on the lines of engineering, project management, and things like that.
I think I can relate it back to when we were talking about the Greeks, right? Talos and the Brahms. I can actually believe Egyptians had their own version of like these super humanoids. So,
Yep,
pretty much, yeah.
absolutely. But I think for today's conversation,
Yeah.
instead of talking about the pyramids, I want to talk about this specific concept called as hieroglyphs. It's not concept, it's out there. So if I have to pull it up, right?
Yeah.
Let me actually show this video. No, let's go back. When we look at these images and these symbols,
Yeah.
if someone who's been to Egypt would be able to relate it to them, all over the walls in every part and every corner, hieroglyphs have been encrypted in the walls. And in reality, hieroglyph is not just art, right? They were actually Egyptian civilization and maybe humanities. One of the first attempts at encoding, preserving, and transmitting complex informations into what we call today modern day technology.
I have a question for you. So you said inscription. So was it just wall inscriptions that they had, or are you saying it was in pyramids also? Or I haven't researched that part. So I was very intrigued.
So mainly it's on the walls that have been like basically etched in stones so that
God.
nobody can take it away because they did not have a way to preserve it. Even when I haven't been to it myself, but again, I've seen it all over. And mainly they're also inside the pyramids, like everywhere inside there, you can
Got
just
it.
see the hieroglyphs. And each sign, like there are multiple symbols. This is made out of symbols, pictures, letters, which could communicate a lot of things. So it could represent a sound, like there's an alphabetical letter, or a whole word, like there could be a logo or a symbol, like there's sun. So sun would resemble sun. Or it's just an abstract idea. You have to
So you're
make it.
saying the sound is also sort of described in it. So it's not just words, but you're saying sounds and couple of other things. Because I
Exactly.
think when we were speaking about it, I think we saw some cool facts which said that they had 700 distinct symbols of these, right?
Yeah.
And they could go from not just monumental inscriptions, but I think they appeared on everything, love for medical prescriptions. So are you saying like this was the language of communication?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. See, if I have to like draw some parallels
Yeah.
between we're thinking of, so this is what hieroglyphs
Mhm.
look like. And when we compare it to modern day technology, within our systems, our tablets, our computers, we have binary codes, which is like 0101, right? So
Well,
hieroglyphs had a multi-layered communication, which
got it.
actually mirrors the programming language that we have today. So think about it.
Yeah.
How I was talking about sun, or you see some birds over there, right? The sun could actually literally mean the sun. Okay.
Or
Or the
something.
day. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So are you saying it could be written or interpreted in either way? So
It-
left to right to left, top to bottom, whatever
yes.
orientation, whatever the direction.
Anyway, because there is no hard fact about how exactly you go about reading hieroglyphs. And the modern data, it works in the same way, right? You just ask someone who doesn't know about binary codes to go and look at 01100001. They'll be like,
Yeah.
what is this? I don't know what this means. But this tiny piece of binary code that we have in our computers, it has its meaning, which changes based on what it's used for, right? Is it a text
Yeah.
message? Is it a photo file? Is it an application? And that's how coding has been done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes sense. I because when you also sent me the article on, we went through it, and I think it says these scribes, Egyptian scribes, had to undergo 10, 12 years of intensive training to master this writing style.
Yep.
So that's, can you draw like some parallels to it? Because that's a lot of time.
No, you're bang on. When you just look at it, you only mentioned that there are 700 symbols, different styles. It's very hard to determine like what the syntax, if I may, the syntax rules were. Like these signs had to appear some way or the other to make proper sense, like for programming languages as well today. And it's very similar to metadata concept when we go to Babylonians era, right? Like when they were writing them down, but that was specific to mathematics. Over here, this was actually a whole language in itself. So as we speak,
Actually, now that you said that,
yeah,
right, you went back to Mesopotamia, because
yeah,
when we were looking at the timeline, and I
yeah,
was also one of it, it said that the clay tablets also paved the way for
mm,
this writing style to come about. Like Egyptians drew some inspiration because it went beyond mathematics. It went into, and if you look at these inscriptions, they are used like everywhere, right? Not just as something to look at and interpret out of, but it's actually used for, like we discussed, medical prescriptions and everyday like communication also. So I think some of those maybe roots were there in the Sumerian way of presenting these tablets. Just something, food for thought, right?
no, it is actually because when you think of it, we are always talking about what has been passed on from the past and what comes to us in the future state.
Yeah.
Everything, information in whatever broken form or even interpretations are
Yeah.
actually moving between generations, between civilizations, between centuries.
Yeah.
And we don't know how many AC, BC, CE. It's all just moving there, right? So, similarly, like for hieroglyphs as well, there is an interpretation that it could have been moved from Babylonian era when they were using the tablets, and they could have taken some inspiration from that.
Yeah.
And even today, like as we are speaking, there's a whole research group that is actually trying to decode this. And right now, with because science and
Yeah.
technology has advanced so much that
Yeah.
we spoke neural networks, which we'll touch base upon in our upcoming episodes. Hopefully, we talk about what neural networks are. But there is a whole group that is actually cleaning these data sets on hieroglyphs so that
Yeah.
machines learn the languages that these ancestors used to carve on.
So it's the GlyphsNet or GlyphsNet. I read about that, but I didn't put that two and two together. But I think that's the specialized neural network that you're talking about. So
Absolutely.
just for the recognition, correct? I think it's just for recognition.
They are doing it for recognition, but moving forward, I think they're going to train the system in such a way that they will start interpreting exactly what were written in those because it's a line of text that
Yeah.
moving in free form.
But I think we can now identify because I think they were damaged. I bet they were eroded. And
Yeah.
then, and I don't think they were standardized. That's what I
Correct.
think. So obviously you have to train the entire system to understand and decode this, right?
Yes.
And also handwriting, because I think it's just, also think if someone's taking 10, 12 years to master writing, I bet there are different ways of writing it and different interpretations.
Yeah.
I think it'd be super interesting if we can build out those linguistic connections. Maybe with other ancient languages, trace back. I think it'd be super interesting.
I think that's where they will head towards next. Because if you really want to understand your past, which you spoke in your like previous episode, right? Like to get to the future, you have to understand what the past is and what it means. And it will be very interesting to actually get to those facts. But yeah,
Absolutely.
that's what I had about hieroglyphs, which was very interesting. So much to read about it, so much content out there. And I feel like I really want to go to Egypt now and go and have a look at it in person to see what it looks like and what it feels like.
I don't think we'll be able to look at it because I'm pretty sure you have archaeologists and historians
Yeah,
working it. But if, like, a cool tour would be really cool.
yeah, that's there. But yeah, that's what we had for Egypt. Since we are brown women in STEM, it would be great if I would touch upon on one more very interesting figure from the past. Our favorite figure is Hypatia. She is not a queen or she was not a princess, but she came from a noble family. And to give a bit about her background, right? So Hypatia was born in the 4th century CE, which is
Yeah.
also 8 AD. This was in Alexandria. So again, roots from Egypt.
Yeah.
You heard of Theon, right?
It was her father, and he was also a very well-known mathematician.
Absolutely. So Hypatia was basically a philosopher back in her days, which was 4th century CE. And she was not just known for her work in mathematics, but even astronomy and also philosophy. So
Yeah.
one specific thing that she's worked on is the astrolabe. While
Yeah.
she's not the one who invented astrolabe, it was done in the 2nd century. And there are again a lot of interpretations actually on who invented the astrolabe.
He was the contributor, right?
Yeah, she
One of
was
the significant contributors, absolutely.
she was a very big influence influencer back then in technological space during her era because the whole way the system worked for astrolabe was very tedious back then. They had to understand a lot of things between the astrolabes. If yes, exactly. So
Yes, I just wanted to put it out.
yeah, so for the ones who want to understand more about astrolabe, so astrolabe was basically a handheld model which was used to figure out directions. It was made out of brass again. A lot of things, these things back then were made out of brass. Yeah, it was made out of
It
brass.
was a common metal then, right? Because we were sort of, I believe, between iron. Don't quote me on it, but maybe we
And
were in between iron and, or maybe bronze and iron.
bronze
So
and iron.
that's why brass was like the common metal of choice.
Yeah, actually, correct. So now when you look at this image, you can see that it is made out of like it has this needle and a pendulum inside that. On top of it, you see this round movable arm, right? That is called as a rete. So you can actually turn that. It represents the ecliptic path of sun and the key stars. And
Yeah.
the whole way this was designed was the rete. It uses specific stars and measuring angles, which has a sighting device which is called as android. And through this, using latitude, longitude, and different geographical chart representations, they could actually determine what position you are at.
Yeah,
It was
modern day GPS. Yeah.
exactly. Back then, if you think of it, it was so intricate. And this was something that Hypatia had worked on, and she was considered as one of the major influencers in explaining and teaching people how to use this.
Yeah, this is her.
Yes, as you can see, like she is known for her mathematics.
She's the, oh, I think the first, or maybe out of, I think back then, the first female mathematician.
Yeah,
Her work in life is documented very well in historical records. So when we both were going and trying to read up more about women
yeah,
doing science or being mathematicians,
yeah,
she is probably one of the ones that is not like missing from the historical records. And
yeah.
she wrote commentaries on, I think, Apollonius's conics
Mm.
and Di, Di, Diophantus arithmetic. So arithmetic and conics. And uh, all her original writings were destroyed in the fires of
Yeah,
at the Library of Alexandria that we were talking about. And now it had 7,000 books and scrolls. So it's like its own repository, like its own Google, which
yeah,
got destroyed. But I think that
yeah,
was fascinating.
yeah. So good you brought that up because that's the arc I want to take toward ending this whole podcast. Was we know that there are so many renowned men from the ancient times who have invented things. But when you think about women, there are very few who are out there. And it was very tragic with what happened with Aphasia.
Yeah.
She was gaining so much prominence back then for her work that she did. And I think that was a time there is again interpretation on two different kinds of incidents that could have taken place. She was murdered because they did not want her to come up. So I think there was a Christian and a non-Christian vertical, and the Christian vertical, the popes who were there back then, they wanted to foreshadow all of her work and did not want to bring women up, and they wanted to like make sure that her death is like an example.
Set.
Yes, they're setting an example by killing someone who was, far ahead during her times. And she was exceptionally intelligent, exceptionally brilliant. And not just on her work, she was actually even working on helping back then diversity and inclusivity. She used to encourage her students to challenge orthodox, think independently. And everything that we think about, like women in STEM today, like how in a world that is still struggling to recognize women in STEM, I think her leadership and her innovation and
Can I
all,
just say one thing because you mentioned the murder?
yeah.
You're right. It was a Christian dominated society because I was I have interest in reading about religion. A lot. You know me, like I love the whole topic of religion. She was a pagan. So
Yeah,
pagan beliefs are very, it talks about intellectual freedom, right? The philosophical beliefs were very different.
yeah,
And when she was murdered, I think 415 CE, that's when the Dark Ages began in
exactly.
Western history. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it's just brilliant. We have at least one woman documented.
Yeah. That also very less fragmented documentation. I think, yeah, it'll be good to end on this note that as we covered about technological innovation that took place in ancient civilization that spanned across so many thousands of years from mythology to ancient civilization. We also got the opportunity to talk about a woman who was actually so brilliant during her time and how it does not matter what day and age we are in today, but there's still a long way to go for women in STEM, especially to come up to speed.
But do you know there's a crater, Hypatia, on the moon, and there was an asteroid 238 that was named in her honor.
Oh,
So some credit is given to her.
I'm so happy.
Yes, I think we've explored these three civilizations. We saw a lot of striking patterns that connect to modern day AI concepts and development. And pattern recognition or building a database system, recognizing data. I think all three civilizations developed their own version of these, specialized notation systems.
Yeah.
And so whether it's Chinese, whether it's the Egyptians or the Mesopotamians, they were also using tools for storing and processing information, correct?
Yes.
So yeah, I think this historical perspective is very valuable. And that's why we are on this approach. Some basic approaches we spoke about. And I think understanding these connections will help us see AI not as something that's an alien technology, but it's part of our shared human heritage. So, yeah.
What a beautiful ending, note, Prachi.
Thank you.
I think with that, we would like to conclude our second episode of Technically Not Speaking. We, yeah, but
Yay.
we will
Let us know. Yeah. Let us know how you like it. We would love your feedback. And over to you.
we will be back hopefully with a lot more interesting facts and interpretations from the past. And if there's something specific like Prachi mentioned, please let us know in the comments below. And yeah, we look forward to sharing some more interesting facts and figures from the past.
We'll be back with episode 3. So, yeah, stay tuned with us and let us know.
Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.